Buenos días, les de Dios. To begin, I just want to call attention to the fact that Pastor Rob Woodruff and our associate pastor, Kay Huggins, and a number of our commissioners for Presbytery are gone today. They're up at Ghost Ranch serving us in other capacities and helping to celebrate the 150th anniversary of our Presbytery. In their absence today, Don Bixby and I, as representatives of the worship committee, will be assisting with worship. So I think I'll start, as our custom, by asking any guests to stand and introduce themselves. I don't think I see any new faces over here. In the center, Willie, is there somebody you want to introduce?
Yes, everyone remembers Maria. She was at law school. This is her mother, Dr. Rosa Sanchez from Madrid, Spain.
Bienvenido. And do we have, I see some new faces over here.
Good morning, I'm Michael Holmquist. My father is in choir.
Wonderful. Okay.
Could you tell me that choir practice is free?
Okay, and I think I see a couple of new faces back there.
I'm Paul Reichbeck, and this is my wife Lisa, and my son Jay, and James Jimenez is giving the sermon.
Okay, so we have a couple of different fan clubs going today. I don't think I see any new faces up in the balcony. So welcome everybody, and please join us after church for fellowship time in the back. We'd like to get to know you a little bit better. I'm going to introduce James Jimenez, who it's an honor to have him with us today. He will be providing the sermon. James is an adjunct professor at UNM School of Public Administration, and he also serves as the executive director of a local nonprofit, which is New Mexico Voices for Children. And the mission of that organization, it was founded in the 1980s by 3 local pediatricians who were very concerned about the well-being of children in our state. Poor children, children with inadequate nutrition, children who were suffering from violence, homelessness, you know, the list goes on and on. So 30 years later, the organization is still working on behalf of New Mexico's children. And the worship committee was particularly interested in having James with us today because the liturgical calendar designates today as Children's Sabbath. And I wondered about precisely what Children's Sabbath was, so I Googled it. And I found out that it's part of a growing children's advocacy movement that tries to unite the religious congregations of all faiths across the nation to think about children for that one Sunday, which is today. So today, all the faiths in our nation are thinking about children and thinking about how they can commit to improving the lives of those that are most vulnerable among us, the children in our communities. So thank you, James, for helping us today to think about this important calling. And again, we hope that you're staying for fellowship, because I know that a lot of people either may have questions or want to get to know you a little bit better. And I think James is going to briefly touch on this, but he has a history with our church. His family were cousins of are cousins of the Candelaria family, and also his father is a graduate, or was a graduate of Manal School. So a few more things to talk about with him when you see him in the back.
His mother also.
Announcements. Susie Chang, I think you have an announcement to bring forward.
Kay asked me to come up and publicly thank our kids that helped serve at the 150th dinner celebration of Presbytery, 150th anniversary of the Presbytery dinner on Thursday night at First Pres. I mean, the room was absolutely packed. And we had Alexis and Jasmine Plouffe and William from Manal. We had probably about 15 kids from Manal, and R2 and Amanda Candelaria. We got those meals out quick, I tell you. They said that normally it takes about a half hour for everybody to start eating. We had it down in 15 minutes.
Wow.
So, and the evening went long, so that was a blessing. We just want to really thank Jasmine and Alexis. Jasmine especially, because I think this is the third time she's done this. Alexis, was that your first? Yeah, you would have never known it because you're a seasoned veteran, I tell you. And Amanda cracks that whip and she gets everybody going in the right direction. It was an interesting evening. I wish all of us could have been there. And then it continued at Ghost Ranch yesterday with the 150th celebration. It's amazing that our presbytery has lost churches and gained churches and lost churches and gained churches, and we still keep growing. And we live in an amazing time for church. But again, thank you to Jasmine and Alexis Plouffe and to William, our Manal representative.
Okay, other announcements today. The flowers to my left and to my right are given today by Beverly Chavez in memory of her parents, Walter and Laverne Leffler, and her mother and father-in-law, Tommy and Josie Chavez.
Anna, may I make an announcement?
Yes.
I'm Martha Powers, whoever, most of you don't know me. But this Saturday, we will be feeding the homeless at St. Martin. And we have all the casseroles are chosen already, the people who are going to make casseroles. So Lauren will be calling you probably on Wednesday night to remind those people who have agreed to make casseroles. And you can pick up your kids on Thursday evening between 4 and 6 in the multi-purpose room. Thank you.
Thank you, Martha. Okay, so other announcements. The session meeting will be this Tuesday. October 26th is the deadline for newsletter submission, so if you've got anything for the newsletter, talk to George. October 24th is the Stewardship Committee, and that will be at Ruth Montoya's home. I know Marie talked last Sunday about the annual Halloween party, but I thought I would touch on it. She is collecting prizes, small things like small toys, school supplies, etc. And she will also need baked goods for the cakewalk. And that Halloween party is a very big thing for us because we get like 200 or more people coming from the Martineztown neighborhood. So we'd like for you to participate in that if you're able. All Saints celebration will be coming on November 4th. And as you recall, in past years, we've projected images of loved ones who have passed during the year in an effort to memorialize them. So if you had a loved one who passed between last November and right now, please make sure that you get a photo to Beverly or talk to her about how to do that. And also on that day, we invite everyone to bring photos, a framed picture of anyone in your life who has passed, and we display those up here, tables, maybe on the piano, and that's also part of our remembrance. I think I've got everything. Any other announcements out there?
Just want to remind people, all of you, that we have talented group of people, and they're going to put up a show on November 4th, right after church, and it will be free will offering and lunch. So we have about a dozen.
You will be regaled and amazed at the talent that we have in fellowship.
And so before I close the announcement, William, do you mind coming to the mic for a moment? I think he wanted to ask for a special prayer.
Hello, good morning, praise the Lord to all. There is a tragedy happened in India, so I think everybody you can be familiar with the religion. It is Hinduism, and so there was a festival called the Shara. So they fired a big man with it is made of cardboard and it has inside firecrackers, and they shoot it with a bow. And when that cardboard man lights, everybody runs from that place because there are lots of firecrackers inside that man. So it is made of cardboard. So the tragedy happened when they were firing the bow and they were firing the man. The people were standing on the railway line, and there was 200 people, and because of the sounds of the firecracker, they don't know the train is coming, so the train crushed all the 200 people, and they are dead now. So some people are not dead, they are seriously injured. So the Presbyterian Church in India, the members have gone there to donate the blood in the hospital, and I want to pray one prayer. So please join me in the prayer. Pray for those people who are hurting and going through some unimaginable circumstances. Pray for those who want their lives to be better and to be free from those things that may be holding them back, even though you may not know them. God knows their situation. Amen.
Thank you, William. Okay, so let us begin worship by standing, if you're able, and joining in the gathering music, which is printed in your bulletin.
Disciples of all life,
And now if you'll join me in the call to worship. When the disciples tried to keep children from Jesus, when the disciples wanted to send hungry people away, saying there were too many to feed,
Jesus said, "We can feed them."
when a parent whose child was in terrible trouble and he came to Jesus,
Jesus said, "We will help."
when a woman in poverty gave what she could,
Jesus honored her generosity. We gathered in the name of that Jesus, welcomed the children, fed hungry people, helped children in trouble, and recognized the gifts of those in poverty. On this Children's Sabbath day, let us follow him in word and deed.
No, there we go. Now it's on. And I'll try not to yell because I already have a microphone. Hi, guys. Good morning, good morning. Wow. I don't know about you, Tessie, but if we count, we have more children down here than we do in the balcony. And that's a good day. That's a great day. This is a blessing. Every single one of you. Today is Children's Sabbath Day. You heard somebody say that before? What do you suppose that means? Who should we celebrate? Maybe children, maybe God, maybe all of us? I think so. I think so. And children get celebrated all the time, even though you only have one birthday. And there's Christmas. And then maybe there's some other special holidays that you celebrate at home with your family. But honestly, we couldn't go on if we didn't have children who grew up to be adults. That's kind of how it works. And so it's really important that we have you all here and that you want to be here and that you're having fun and that you're learning and that you're being a part of us because there's no other way of going. And we read a little bit of a passage that Jesus said, "Bring me the children." Some people were saying, "Oh no, we don't need them here, we don't want them here." And Jesus said, "No way, right here. This is where they belong. And this is where they should stay. And this is where they should feel comfortable." And hopefully that happens with everyone, children and bigger children. Because you have to grow old. Sorry. We have to grow old. That's part of life. But we do not have to grow up. We can remain children, and that's a good part of life too. Happiness is seeing smiling faces and loving God and being a part of all this. What's the best part about being here today? You're at church. What's the best part? Being in choir. Somebody likes to sing, and she does a very good job at it. And we're so glad that they're here. How about you? What's the best part about today? Church and the sun is shining. The sun is shining, and it's a good day. And we thank you so much for having these children be a part of us. And we'll take care of them. I'd like each and every one to raise your hand. All the congregation. I promise to look after these children because they're a part of us. Amen. Let's say a prayer. Dear Heavenly Father, thank you so much for all these smiling faces, for all the wonderful parents who bring them, from grandmas and grandpas, aunties and uncles, and anyone else who love the children, as we all do. Let's protect them, let's keep them, and let's help them along their way. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen. And we will be singing, I didn't bring my thing, but we're going to now be singing For the Beauty of the Earth in the red hymnal number 14.
holy and everlasting God, in Christ you have revealed your glory among the nations. Preserve the works of your mercy, that your church throughout the world may persevere with steadfast faith in the confession of your name. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the unity of the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen. The call to confession. At school, at work, at home, everywhere we often try hard to look like we're perfect, like we're doing it all right. But God knows that's not true, that we make mistakes, get it wrong, say or do something we shouldn't, or wish we hadn't. God doesn't want us to pretend to be perfect. Instead, God invites us to confess our sin, trusting Jesus' promise that we are loved and forgiven, and make a new start with God and each other. Prayer of confession. God of great and small, old and young, near and far, O God of all, we confess that our love is not like yours. In the face of injustice, we often feel helpless or hopeless. We give in despair about ending poverty, stopping gun violence, or uniting families torn apart by forces more powerful than them. Help us to work for justice, especially in poverty. Help us to love kindness, working especially to end violence. Help us to walk humbly with you, opening our arms to all children, as did the one we follow, and in whose name we pray, Jesus the Christ. Amen. And now time for silent prayer. Amen.
Señor, ten piedad. Señor, ten piedad. Cristo, ten piedad. Cristo, ten piedad. Señor, ten piedad. Señor, ten piedad.
Listen, I have something to say. God sent God's own child Jesus that we might know ourselves to be loved and forgiven children of God. Hear and believe the good news. In Jesus we are forgiven. Thanks be to God. As forgiven people, let us share peace with one another. Peace of Christ be with you.
Something like that. I don't know if it's, I don't know what it is.
I'm sure.
Hey, Lopez, please.
The prayer of illumination. Send us the Holy Spirit, O God, as we hear your word and proclaim on this children's Sabbath day. Come, let us settle for being settled, comfortable with being comforted, set at ease with an easy word. Instead, we pray that the Spirit will supply us with new insight, help us see you where we least expect it, and move us to new responses. Amen. Today's scripture is Psalms 127, verse 3. It says, Lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his word. This is your word. The word of the Lord.
Thanks be to God.
Muy buenos días. Good morning. It's such a, my name is James Jimenez. I'm the executive director of New Mexico Voices for Children, which is a New Mexico-based child advocacy organization based here in Albuquerque. It's a great pleasure for me to be here this morning, substituting for Reverend Woodrow. As you've heard, today is the 27th annual observance of Children's Sabbath celebration, which this year is designated Realizing Dr. King's Vision for Every Child, Lives of Hope, Not Despair. And we've seen this theme already through the worship service. This multi-faith Children's Sabbath weekend engages places of worship across the country in focusing prayers, worship, education programs, and action on learning more about the urgent problems facing our nation's children, and most importantly, inspiring new year-round action to improve the lives of children, so that together we are inspiring that change. It helps them lead lives of hope. Now, in preparing for today, I was inspired by several scriptures that speak to the need for Christians to work for this goal. For example, Proverbs 31 verse 9 says, Open your mouth, judge righteously, defend the rights of the poor and needy. Or 1 John chapter 3 verses 17 and 18, But if anyone has the world's goods and sees his brother in need, yet closes his heart against him, how does God's love abide in him? Little children, let us not love in word or talk, but in deed and in truth. These scriptures reminded me of the conversation I had with Reverend Woodruff a week or so ago about the good works of the congregation here at Second Presbyterian, how you're helping to feed the hungry and house the homeless. I thank you for this service to our community. But we know the past decade's not been kind to our children here in New Mexico. They've suffered greatly. And we know this from the data. The statistics tell us that we are next to last in the nation for food security, meaning that many children don't have enough to eat on a daily basis. Our poverty rate for children has been 49th or 50th most of those years. And in fact, the Annie E. Casey Foundation in June released its annual report on child well-being and ranked our beloved state 50th, last in the nation for child well-being. And who are these children? Well, we know that most of them are children of color, the large majority of whom are Hispanic and Native American children. But before I talk more about the status of children in New Mexico and how we can realize Dr. King's vision, I'd like to start by telling you a story about two children. Imagine, if you will, a young boy, just 8 years old. This boy lives in southern New Mexico with his 9 brothers and sisters. They live in a very modest 3-bedroom house. The boys in one room, the girls in another, and their parents in a third. But the children are heartbroken. Their mother has just passed. Poor medical care, a limited diet, and the strain of giving birth to 12 babies, 2 of them died at birth. It's been too much. The children's father is often gone, simply trying to earn enough money to feed his large family. But these are depression years, when everybody was struggling. The children's father is a man of the cloth who is often ministering to others, and in any event, is often not available for his children. What will happen to these children? What will happen to our young boy? Fortunately for this young boy, he has older brothers and sisters to love him and to care for him, to ensure that he's fed, that he continues to attend school, that he learns the responsibilities that go with being a part of a family. This young boy, while deeply scarred by the loss of his mother, grows to be a quiet but very inquisitive teenager. His father, who's always a strong proponent for good education for his children, senses the potential in his son and seeks out a school where the boy can get a full, well-rounded Christian education. And so he enrolls the boy in the Manal School here in Albuquerque. At Manal, he finds a loving but rather strict environment, structure with a curriculum that challenges him and allows him to explore his varied interests. At about the same time, there's a young girl living in northern New Mexico. Her father is also a pastor. In fact, he's a Presbyterian minister. This little girl is the third oldest of 6 children, 5 girls and a baby brother. Our little girl has also experienced a traumatic change in her family circumstances. Her father leaves the family and moves to another state. Now, when I say leaves, I'm being a little kind, in that he actually abandons his first family to start a second. The little girl's mother is left with 6 children to raise on her own. While the little girl's mother has marketable skills, she has a college degree at a time when few women have that opportunity. She never earns much, and the family is desperately poor. Now, eventually, our little girl finds her way to the Manal School also, where 2 of her older sisters are enrolled. And as with our little boy, she finds a kind of stability she has never known, the kind of stability that comes from a structured environment. She becomes part of a close-knit group of friends, one of whom is still with us today. He's here. At Manal, our 2 children find a support network that provides for their basic needs. It allows them to learn and grow into responsible young adults. Now, you may have guessed that the story I'm telling you is the story of my mother and father. Eli Jimenez and Tina Jaramillo. 2 children in New Mexico who found each other at Manal and were married here in Albuquerque at First Presbyterian. In fact, they were married for 52 years before my mother passed in 2002. At Manal, my parents became part of a loving, strong, vibrant community where they were allowed to lead lives of hope, not lives of despair. Manal played a crucial role in offering opportunity to Hispanic children well before the civil rights movements of the 1960s. It may not have been discussed in these terms in those days, but the education offered to Hispanic children of very modest means was a great example of faith in action. There was a profound social justice movement that had consequences for generations of New Mexico's children. The education and support they received allowed my parents to transcend their very humble beginnings and set them on a path to success in life and prepared the way for me and my 4 siblings and my children and my grandchildren. The stability my parents offered in our home also allowed the 5 of us to realize our potential. And it's hard to imagine the lives my parents might have lived had they not been afforded the opportunities offered at Manal. Part of that learning from my parents occurred right here at Second Presbyterian, where the Manal kids would come for weekly services. And one of the reasons they came here was a family connection. Reverend Candelario's wife, Adela, was a Chavez, and a cousin of my grandmother, Ophelia Chavez. My father spent many Sunday afternoons with the Candelarios before returning to Manal for the week. My father, who will be 92 next month, still speaks of his appreciation for the support and love he received here, and his fondness for his Candelario primos. And of course, I also need to tell you that in a very New Mexico way, my daughter Lisa married into the Second Pres family when she married Barbara Reichbach's grandson, Paul. Little did she know that her husband's great auntie Irene was married to my dad's primo, Carlos Aguilar. It's complicated, right? It's complicated. But how New Mexico is that? My father was fortunate in that there was a support system in place for him, which helped him ensure that he could realize his potential, or he could prepare for success in college and realize his dream of becoming a teacher. And as an educator, he spent more than 30 years in service to other people's children, helping them realize their potential. But it's clear from the data I talked about that today too many of New Mexico's children don't have access to the kinds of supports that my parents received at Manal. Their futures are compromised in ways that has led to unacceptable child well-being rankings. And this is particularly troubling because our oft-stated claims of how we value our children and the importance of children. And while we often claim that children are what we value most in New Mexico, these rankings, these child well-being rankings, kind of belie that claim. If we truly valued our children the way that we claim, we wouldn't have children that don't have enough to eat. We wouldn't have nearly 1/3 of our children living in poverty, and we wouldn't be ranked dead last in the nation for educational outcomes. If we, as a community and the state, truly believe that children are the gift from God, we would find ways to address the horrific violence perpetrated against our children. As I noted earlier, the Annie Casey Foundation once again ranked New Mexico as last in the nation for child well-being. It's hard to fathom, last in the nation. We at Voices think that is unacceptable, and I know that you do too, because it means too many of our children will not achieve their God-given potential. In Dr. King's words, too many of our children are living lives of despair, not lives of hope. This is particularly troubling because of the long-term impacts that poverty has on child development. We know from brain science that when children don't have enough nutritious food, their brains don't completely develop. And we know when children are exposed to multiple adverse childhood experiences, their brains develop in unhealthy ways that have lifelong consequences. How is it that we allow this to happen in New Mexico? Well, there's many reasons, and we could likely begin a very vigorous debate if I asked each of you for your thoughts on it. But in my view, among the most important reasons for this situation we find ourselves in is because we don't truly value our children. Rather than working to ensure that every child has the opportunity to achieve their God-given potential, we set other priorities. We've allowed ourselves to be distracted from this most important of missions. And by becoming distracted from this most important mission, we become complicit in the outcomes for New Mexico's children. Now, we know that historically the faith community and nonprofits have played important roles in advancing social justice agenda and in advocating for children. We've heard about some of that this morning. But the faith community and nonprofits can't do it alone. We certainly can't do it at the scale necessary to address the need here in New Mexico. We must have well-funded, evidence-based programs provided by our city, county, and state governments, and that is precisely why New Mexico Voices for Children was created. We were founded, as you heard, 31 years ago right here in Albuquerque by 3 pediatricians, Dr. Stan Stark, Dr. Bob Greenberg, and Dr. Norby Kindelschman. Some of you may know of them. We do research-based advocacy to benefit New Mexico's children and families, and foundational to our work is the notion of racial and ethnic equity. In other words, we view the solutions to poor child well-being rankings through a social justice lens. We believe that the research is important because it grounds policies benefiting children in evidence. Through our advocacy work, we provide policymakers with evidence-based solutions to provide child well-being. And we don't view child well-being as a partisan issue. It's not. I like to say that we're equal opportunity critics, or criticize any politician not doing right by our children. The work that we do is focused in 3 areas: family economic security, health, and education, similar to the kinds of supports that my parents received at Manal. Now, occasionally I'm asked, how can you keep doing this work as a child advocate with such deplorable statistics? My answer is that despite the rankings and the challenges our children face, we at Voices believe deeply in the strength and resiliency of our families And we know that the stats don't tell the full story of the really complex lives our children lead. We also believe that communities working together can create the kind of society where our children live lives of hope, not lives of despair. But it truly does take a village. It takes vocal advocates, it takes committed public officials, and motivated citizens to take a stand for children. Because you see, we believe that we have a moral imperative to lift up not just our own children, but all children. We believe that if we truly value children, we'll see it reflected through such mundane vehicles as the budgets of our city, county, and state. And as former Vice President Joe Biden once said, "Don't tell me what you value, show me your budget. I'll tell you what you value." Right? Thus, we believe it is particularly important in this election season to ask candidates for office, what are they doing to improve the lives of children? A simple question. Now, the faith community has been instrumental in virtually all of the important social movements in this country. And this week I had the opportunity to hear the Reverend William Barber speak about the role the faith community has played in advocating for children. You may know Dr. Barber's name. He was the architect of Moral Monday movement in North Carolina. He's also started the Second Poor People's Campaign, which is active here in New Mexico, and some of you may be involved with that. Reverend Barber is fond of saying, I'm quoting Dr. King, who said that too often we have a high blood pressure of creeds and an anemia of deeds. Reverend Barber also challenged us to link arms and to march together to oppose the forces of racism and classism and recognize the power of collective action. So on this 27th Annual National Observance of Children's Sabbath celebration, I encourage you to keep New Mexico's children not just in your thoughts, but also in your actions year-round. In the past, the faith community has played a crucial role in helping to create more opportunities for New Mexico's children to achieve their God-given potential, as evidenced by the success in life of my mother and father. The children of New Mexico need your support. So I hope you'll join us in advocating for children, and advocating for a more just New Mexico, and in advocating for a New Mexico in which all children can lead lives of hope.
Let the
join me in the affirmation of faith? We trust in Jesus Christ, Holy God. Jesus proclaimed the reign of God, preaching good news to the poor, and release to the captives, teaching by word and deed, and blessing the children, healing the sick, and binding up the brokenhearted, eating with outcasts, forgiving sinners, and calling all to repent and believe the gospel. The next hymn is Help Us to Accept Each Other, page 754. The author of the book of Hebrews reminds us to do good, to share what you have, for such sacrifices are pleasing to God. Let us present our offerings. Gracious God, we thank you for this bounty. Bless it and us for your work of truth and justice in the world. Amen.
At this time, it's our custom to take prayers from the community. And I'm not as practiced as Rob as doing this, so if you're offering a prayer to the community, will you please stand and speak loudly and slowly, and I'll try to repeat your concern so that it can be heard by everybody. Anybody over here? Mickey.
Prayers for my neighbor's son-in-law who just got diagnosed with Parkinson's.
Okay, prayers for a neighbor's son-in-law who was recently diagnosed with Parkinson's. Anybody in the middle? Susie.
China and I went to Ghost Ranch yesterday. Thankful for the fall colors. They were absolutely gorgeous. God painted us a beautiful picture.
Thank you, Susie. Susie lifts up the joy of the fall colors and the beautiful world that we live in. She and Francis were up at Ghost Ranch yesterday. Willie?
Yeah, prayer of joy. Maria has reached the glorious age of 17. It's her birthday. And Matilda hurt herself in Indonesia. She broke her wrist.
Oh no.
She's on the mend.
Okay, so 2 prayers. Birthday blessings for Maria, who turned 17, and a healing prayer for healing. As we had, was it a broken wrist? Okay. So those 2, Abel?
Yes, prayers for the Silva family in Belen. She was my cousin, her memorial services were yesterday.
Okay. Prayers for the Silva family from Belen who had a recent passing, cousins of Abel's. Anybody else in the middle? Okay. Okay.
Several weeks ago, I mentioned that a close friend of my son's, named Paul Gonzalez, contracted bone cancer. And he's a wonderful musician, and I mentioned that there was going to be a benefit concert to help him out with his testing and his recovery. And that concert is today at the Indian Cultural Center from 12 o'clock to 6 o'clock. There's some fabulous jazz being played all afternoon down there. And so if you would like to make it, that'd be wonderful. If you can't, keeping Paul Gonzalez in your prayers would be absolutely wonderful. Thank you very much.
Okay, so healing prayers for Paul Gonzalez and also an invitation to a fundraiser at Indian Pueblo Cultural Center today, 12 to 6. It's a fundraiser for his health care needs. So if you're able to go down there, it sounds like great music. Anybody else down here? Up on the balcony, anybody? Okay, Marie.
Rick's cousin, who he grew up with, Jesse, is having heart surgery, so prayers for Jesse.
Okay, prayers for Jesse, a cousin of Rick's who's having heart surgery. Iris.
2 prayers. One for my mom who has some health issues and she's just trying to get better. And the second one is for travel mercies. Annika will be heading over to Arizona this next week to visit some colleges up there. So.
Wow. Okay, so 2 prayers. Iris's mother for her health. She's having a little bit of a struggle, and we're praying that she recovers and can hang on to good health. And Annika, traveling mercies and a joy. She is going to visit colleges in Arizona soon. Joyce.
2 prayers. Maria Elena Puebla in the last stages of getting her citizenship, except you take the obstacle for her brother. And now her sister, Ana Mercado, was arrested because she was protesting not getting money she was supposed to get. And she had her residency had expired. And then also taking all the children to the border separated and all those children suffering from their families. We just have to, vote or whatever we can do to protest.
Okay, I'm not sure I'm gonna get all this, but, prayers for the children who are being separated from their families and for their families as well at, our borders, or particularly our Mexico-New Mexico border. And, that's particularly pertinent to our children's Sabbath today. And also for two friends, Cuban friends of Joyce's, one who is, trying to get residency,
No, she gets
citizenship.
and they keep getting obstacles.
Okay, so a smoother path towards citizenship, and then her daughter was recently arrested.
Her sister.
Or sister, recently arrested. So, prayers for them. Amanda.
I'm asking for prayers for our good friend's grandson. He just turned about 1, I think. He has second-degree burns from his back, on his back all the way down around his diaper area. From
So prayers for a 1-year-old who suffered severe burns from chemical burns. So please keep that child in your prayers for healing and to be pain-free. Sandra.
I would like prayers for John T. in regards to his health and work.
Yes, prayers for John T. He's normally sings in our choir and brings amazing musical talent to us on most Sundays. So prayers for his health. And Carmen.
God's blessing on James' work, and that we might all receive insight as to how we can be part of this effort to support our kids.
Thank you. Prayers for the work that James and the work that his organization does. Prayers for ourselves that we might receive insight into how we might participate and further support the children of New Mexico and of our communities. So if you'll join me, let us bow our heads and we ask that the prayers that were offered be lifted to the Lord, and also the prayers that we did not voice, those that weigh heavy in our heart. And also we ask God to help us to end poverty in our time, the poverty of having a child with too little to eat and no place to sleep, no air, sunlight, and space to breathe, nor to bask and grow. The poverty of watching your child suffering hunger or get sicker and sicker and not knowing what to do or how to get help because you don't have another dime or a car or money or health insurance. We ask God to end poverty in our time, the poverty of working your fingers to the bone every day, taking care of somebody else's children, and neglecting your own, and still not being able to pay your bills. We ask God to end the poverty of having a job which does not let you afford a stable place to live, and being terrified that you'll become homeless and lose your children to foster care. We ask God to end the poverty of losing your job, running out of unemployment benefits, and having no other help in sight. We ask God to end the poverty of working all your life, caring for your children, and having to start all over again, caring for the grandchildren you love. We ask God to end the poverty of earning a college degree, having children, opening a daycare center, and taking home $300 a week or a month if you're lucky. We ask God to end the poverty of loneliness and isolation and alienation, having no one to call or visit, no one to tell you where to get help or assist you in getting it, or care if you're living or dead. We ask God to end the poverty of having too much and sharing too little and having the burden of nothing to carry. We ask God to end the poverty of convenient blindness and deafness and indifference to others. We ask God to end the poverty of low aim and paltry purpose, of weak will and tiny vision. of big meetings and small actions, of loud talk and grudging service. We ask God to end the poverty of believing in nothing, standing for nothing, sharing nothing, sacrificing nothing, struggling with others for nothing. We ask God to end the poverty of pride and ingratitude for God's gifts of life and children and family and freedom and home and country, and not wanting for others to have what you want for yourself. We ask God to end the poverty of greed for more and more and more and more, for ignoring, for blaming and exploiting the needy and taking from the weak to please the strong. We ask God to end the poverty of addiction to more and more things, to drugs, to drink, to work, to self, to violence, to power, to fleeting fame, and an unjust status quo. We ask God to end the poverty of fear, which keeps you from doing the thing you know is right. We ask God to end the poverty of convenient ignorance about the needs of those around you and of despair and cynicism. Dear God, help us end poverty in our time, in all its phases and places, young and old, rural, urban, suburban, small town, and in every color of humans you have made everywhere. Dear God, help us to end poverty in our time in all its guises, inside and out, physical and spiritual, so that all our and your children may live the lives that you intend. And all God's people said, Amen. Join me in the Lord's Prayer in Spanish. Padre nuestro que estás en los cielos, santificado sea tu nombre. Venga tu reino, hágase tu voluntad, como en el cielo, así también en la tierra. El pan nuestro de cada día, danoslo hoy, y perdónanos nuestras deudas, como también nosotros perdonamos a nuestros deudores. Y no nos dejes caer en tentación, mas líbranos del mal, porque tuyo es el reino, y el poder, y la gloria, por todos los siglos. Amen. The next hymn, we've got an error in the bulletin, so it's actually page 765 in the red hymnal. May the God of hope go with us. Page 765.
Go forth to be the arms of God's love for every child. Go forth to extend Christ's welcome to every child. Go forth to be the voice of justice and the power of the Spirit. May the God of love, hope, and justice be with you and each child of God this day and forevermore. Amen.